Buonasera a tutti, good evening to everybody. È veramente un piacere, facciamo l'introduzione in italiano, è veramente un grande piacere questa sera cominciare il nostro public program per questa mostra delle Olimpiadi che sta avendo, ve lo dico molto francamente, grande successo. Abbiamo tantissime scuole, tanti stranieri che vengono. Il momento delle Olimpiadi a Milano l'abbiamo aspettata, ma in questo momento sta veramente rivelando tutte le potenzialità che effettivamente ci aspettavamo. E questa sera cominciamo con un ospite di eccezione, Angelita Teo, che è la direttrice della Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage, che dialoga con il presidente emerito della Fondazione Luigi Rovati, sì, onorario, anche merito, a cui si deve l'inizio di questa esposizione, perché quando abbiamo saputo che a Milano ci sarebbero stati, che Milano aveva vinto le Olimpiadi invernali, Lucio ha voluto subito, ha detto dobbiamo fare una mostra incredibile, dobbiamo portare la tomba delle Olimpiadi. Ci abbiamo lavorato 2 anni e ce l'abbiamo fatta e siamo qui questa sera, ma questa sera parleremo dei simboli olimpici e dell'importanza dei simboli olimpici e dei valori olimpici che sono rappresentati anche all'interno della nostra mostra. Vi segnalo che la conversazione sarà in inglese, ma qui avrete la traduzione in tempo reale. Grazie ancora a tutti, buona serata, e per chi non l'ha vista vi invito a vedere questa mostra molto particolare e molto completa. Grazie.
Grazie, thank you Giovanna, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. I think we have a very interesting conversation because, as Giovanna mentioned, we have the opportunity of having Dr. Angelita Teo. I took some notes on your background. So, as Giovanna said, she's the director of the International Olympic Committee's Foundation for Culture and Heritage since 2019. And in this role, of course, she's also the director of the IOC Olympic Museum in Lausanne. And the Olympic Museum was kind enough, and Angelita especially, to give us this fantastic collaboration. You know that when we do an exhibition, we have collaborations with different museums. In this particular case, beside the archaeological museums, we were able to obtain the collaboration from the Olympic Museum in Lausanne. And this gave us the opportunity to mix the archaeological artifacts, as usually we do, with contemporary objects, and especially with the objects from the Olympic Museum in Lausanne. Angelita has a background in anthropology and archaeology, and she holds a master's degree in contemporary art curation, and has therefore a huge expertise in global culture and heritage. Actually, she was formerly the senior director at Singapore's National Heritage Board and led the National Museum of Singapore and directed several fairs and exhibitions in Singapore prior to joining the Olympic Committee. So help me to give a huge welcome to Angelita tonight. Thank you. Well, we've decided together to start our conversation based on the objects that we are actually exhibiting in the museum. But first of all, before moving to the first slide, I would like to ask you, Angelita, an introduction, your opinion on the role of art and museology in the celebration of the Olympic Games, the symbols of the Olympic Games, and the values of the Olympic Games.
Firstly, thank you, Dr. Rovati, and thank you for the invitation today. It's a great delight to be doing this dialogue with you. And I think you asked a very fundamental question, is what makes the Olympic Games unique? And it is exactly that aspects. which is the inclusion of culture, art, and heritage in the understanding of the values of the games that it brings to the host cities, to the athletes, and to the world at large. So, as the director of the Culture and Heritage, I guess, department of the IOC, we do our best, not just during games time, but between games, to really explain to the world why it is important for us to have this idea behind the Olympic movement. You know, what's the meaning of Olympism, the philosophy behind it. If you go back to the beginning, it was all about making the harmony between the body, the mind, and the soul, which I think in today's context is extremely relevant for us to be talking about it again. And therefore, I feel that for many of us who are students of history, one thing we realize is that history is cyclical. Everything comes back. And I think today, again, everything that we will be talking about would also remind us that Pierre de Coubertin, when he decided to have the modern Olympics, his situation that he was going through is not very unsimilar to some of the situations we are in today.
That's right, absolutely. So let me start with the first slide, since you mentioned Pierre de Coubertin. Baron de Coubertin, actually we have, thanks to your loan, the boxing gloves of Baron de Coubertin. He was a sportsman. He was especially an historian and an educator. So actually, he was supporting, as far as I read around, the role of sport as a school of life, and I truly believe this is true. I learned a lot in making sport, and that I applied to my professional career. And he always thought of the Olympic Games not only as a sport event, but as an educative and cultural movement. So, in your mind, what is Olympism and how it reflects the idea of de Coubertin?
Pierre de Coubertin himself comes from a family of great artists. His father was a great painter. He grew up because he comes from a affluent background, so he has the opportunity of not just being exposed to art, but also to sports, because sports in those days in France is only for the elites. You know, is quite different from other parts of Europe. For him, I think when he realized that sports in the more Anglo-Saxon countries was actually looked at beyond what it was in France, he got very excited, and he felt that including that into education would indeed be able to have more well-rounded, youth for the future of the world, and therefore he decided that this is something that he wanted to really dedicate his whole life to doing. He was a very young man when he had this idea, and to be honest, he was very much in the forefront of the role of sports, and I think he's still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. And actually, he was able to bring these concept from England, from the British guys, that was not present otherwise in Europe. Sport was something, to care for your body, but not seen really as an education. While for the British, this was a mainstay, and he was able, as a French, that is not granted, to give this, to translate from the British world to Europe, and of course to the US, to Asia, and other countries, this concept that in my view is absolutely fantastic and appropriate for the role of sport and the Olympism, isn't it?
Even up to today, I think, in fact, we still work very closely with schools. We have Olympic value education program that we bring to different countries. And in fact, in some countries, it's part of curriculum. where primary school students practice both sports outside of the classroom. That includes Olympic values, but also include Olympic values in classroom with their other classes as well. So it's actually extremely versatile in terms of how we're also adapting it to in today's context.
Absolutely.
And keeping the his ideals and the movement accessible to a larger audience.
Yes, yes. And I think we are having a lot of schools coming to see the exhibition, more than we had for other educational exhibitions, probably because this mixing of archaeology with the contemporary Olympic movement and the educational role of the two work fantastically well.
We have been getting such great reviews about the exhibition here. I think the fact that it surprises people, not often do you see things that are so different put together. The juxtaposition between them in itself, I think for young people is refreshing. Right. And I hope that with this exhibition, not only would they have gained interest in the Olympic movement, but also about the past and the wonderful archaeological collection you have as well.
Right, thank you. Very, very good. So we will move to another object that we have obtained from the Museum of the International Olympic Committee. And this is a poster of the Rome 1960 Olympic Games. And we see, I've chosen it because I see several things that we will discuss today. So first of all, Rome, of course, was a fantastic location for the games. I mean, the historical role of Rome is represented by this column, by the design, the wolf, the Capitoline wolf. We see the connection with different cultures and languages. This is actually in Hindi, so it is not in Italian, it is not in English, but it establishes the connection between the different countries participating, attending, and watching the games. But I've chosen these also because we have the 5 circles on the white background, which is the symbol of the Olympic Games. So what does it represent for you? What is the meaning of these? What they transmit?
I think first of all, also let me just comment that in 1960, Rome was ahead of a lot of other cities because the posters were in 12 languages. 11 actually, 12, because I think there's some smaller one that has Chinese in it. But I think in that time, it was actually, again, a first. So I think it's worth mentioning that. The Olympic rings, and as Dr. Rovati has correctly said, is not 5 colors, but 6. It includes the white as well. And Pierre de Coubertin, when he was coming up with the ideas of creating this ring as the Olympic symbol, it was partly influenced by the fact that he was a scout his entire life. So he took inspiration from the scout logo, and he kind of built on it. And back in those days, these 6 colors, the white, the blue, the yellow, the black, the green, and the red, were present in every flag of the world. At least one of it is present in every flag of the world. And that was really the idea behind the rings.
That's right. This is amazing. I mean, because the Olympic Games are actually the place where you get together people from everywhere in the world. So this idea of having a symbol that connects all flags in the world, it's
also worth mentioning that the IOC, we regularly do surveys. The 5 rings is actually the most recognizable symbol in the world. In fact, it's bigger than some other brands that we think of. So the power of the rings is really quite impressive. I
think so. I agree. Great. So let's move to another slide. We have one of the most important, most recognized, beside the 5 circles, of course, symbols of the Olympic Games, and is the Olympic torch relay. So well, we have here, we start here to connect ancient objects. We see actually an athlete from this Greek amphora, oinokoe actually, not an amphora, carrying the flame, and we have the modern torches. We have again the Roman one, 1960, and we have this year's Milano Cortina torch. And I was curious to understand actually when the torch relay, or in any case bringing the flame, was promoted. And I understood that in antiquity it was not like that, because the fire was important. They were actually lighting the fire at the Zeus temple, because it was a sacred symbol, but they were not carrying the flame. This was actually a game, a race, where the athletes were running with the flame. And then with the modern Olympic Games, we introduced the Olympic torch relay. So what does it tell you?
One of the things that you realize that people remember about the Olympic Games is some of the traditions. And the torch relay is definitely key. The opening ceremony, the reading of the oath and all of those things. There are things that are what I call traditions. And with traditions, it develops a certain value and importance. For the torches, it first started in 1936, actually, at the Berlin Games. And that's where it was first conceptualized as an idea. But since then, it has been such a main staple of the Olympic Games that we have created a whole ritual around it. The flame has to be lit in Olympia. And we have all these priestesses who are specially chosen for this ritual. And it has to be lit with with the natural sunlight and all that. So if you come to the museum in Lausanne, you'll see all of that as well. So I'm also trying to encourage people to come to Lausanne, to our museum.
Absolutely.
But like I say, I think now in today's world, I think the relay does two things. I think one, it encapsulates the idea of design, and one of the excitement is the unveiling of the torches, the personality, the characteristic of the country or the city that's hosting the game comes through very well. I mean, I really, really like the Milano Cortina torch because it's very, very elegant.
That's right.
At the same time. So I think design is one aspect, and I think like art, design is something that we should not neglect, and how important it is in our everyday life. And I think I'm speaking to Italians, so I'm sure this, you all fully agree with me about how important design is. The other thing is connection. How the organizing committee decides the route of the relay. The people that will be part of the relay. And the relay is very international. And I think that is very important to remind us how universal the games are and how welcoming it is as well. And the torch relay is really the beginning of that.
Yeah. And how important is the torch relay for the country that hosts this? We had 10,001 torch bearers, as you know, throughout Italy for almost 3 months, I believe, and there was an enthusiasm around the torch relay, this trip of the flame around Italy that was uncomparable to any other events. And I have a surprise for you. I was a torch bearer. I carried the flame. And it was one of the largest emotions of my life, I must say. So I proudly wear my pin, my torch bearer pin, every day now.
I'm jealous. I have not done it yet.
I was really happy about that. It was raining cats and dogs, but but I tell you that there were plenty of people around. This was in my hometown of Monza, and there were thousands of people. Although it was raining, it was eight in the evening. It was amazing. It was really great. So fantastic. Let's move to another topic, again, taking advantage of some of the posters that you kindly loaned to us. Here I've chosen a couple of them. The first Olympic Winter Games in Chamonix in 1924, and of course, Cortina in 1966. Now, as we see when we talk about Chamonix, we have the Mont Blanc, so an iconic place, an iconic mountain. When we talk about Cortina, we have the Dolomites, another iconic place for everybody in the world. And also some particular locations of the Olympic sports are represented in the cities. I think to the Olympia delle Tofane descent in Cortina, which is every skiers would like to try it sooner or later. But also with Milano and with other cities hosting the games, we have symbols of the cities. I mean, Milano, there are several works of art, museums as this one, but even more important than this one, we have the Duomo, we have plenty of ancient remains, and we have also sport locations. I mean, the San Siro Stadium that hosted the opening ceremony is something so dear to the Milanese people that it's a symbol of the cities itself. And I think that this is the first time, I guess, that we have these diffuse Olympic Games. So it's not only, already we have a double name. It's the first time, Milano and Cortina. But also the Olympic Games are diffused. We have then Livigno, we have Bormio, we have Anterselva, and so forth. And each of these locations brings something, brings a symbol to the Olympic movement. Do you believe that the cities that host the game also represent a symbol of the Olympism and of the Olympic Games in general? Do they contribute?
The quick answer is a definite yes. One of the things you realize with the Olympic Games is that the Olympic Games is constantly evolving and keeping itself relevant to the times. In this case, we're talking also about technology. In order to have what we call the diffuse games, it's really possible because there's technology. I mean, some of you, I guess, were either at the San Siro stadium for the opening or at home watching it, and we had multiple sites for the athletes' entrance, with a bit of television magic, so to say, to have the same portal that everybody walks through. People at home feels as if it is seamless. Of course, we at the stadium know it's not, huh? But I think that the reality is the majority of the people today enjoy the games through streaming, through platforms on screen. And that's why I feel that the Milano Cortina game, being the first game that involves more than one city, is going to be a success because it allows people to understand the shall I say, the landscape of Italy, and to be able to see how beautiful and how the contrast as well, and it's not just in one city. I think that's important. So I think with the games in Milano Cortina, that worked really well. The cities will always have their own legacy projects where people would remember the games after it has left, and hopefully when it comes back again in a few decades as well. I also wanted to quickly say that the reason the Winter Olympics came about was because the Olympic Games wanted to include other sports when in the early 1900s. So in the early 1900s, before the 1924 games, there were actually things like skating and ice skating in the summer games, and after that, I think through the sheer love of snow sports, the Winter Games was given birth in 1924, although it was only recognized as the Winter Games in 1926, which is quite interesting as well. But in today's world, with the education, with the way a big part of the world, especially in Europe, feeling how important winter sports is not just a sport, but a lifestyle, a culture, that I feel that this attempt to have multiple cities to host the Winter Game is very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you believe that this is a model that probably will continue to have these diffuse kind of games?
Definitely the next one. The next one will be the French Alps, so it will be diffused as well. But I think it's also because the games have gone so big. It's almost impossible for a city like Cortina now to host the game. In '56, it was a small game. You have just a few thousand people. Now you're talking about tens and thousands of people. I don't think any one ski resort will be able to host the Olympic Games just because of the sheer size of the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And let me remind everybody that we will have the closure ceremony next Sunday in the Arena of Verona, which is another fantastic and historical place. So it's amazing to have the closure of the Olympic Games in such a location. Very good. While we stay on this, I have another question for you, which is about partnerships. I mean, the International Olympic Committees establishes several partnerships during the Games. Cultural, as this one, and several other museums that are participating in the cultural Olympiad. But also there are several commercial partners that, in my view, help to connect the territories with the Olympic movement. Do you believe that this is also a value, having partners for, even commercial partners for the Olympic Games?
I think the partnership is all based on shared values. I remember coming here a few months ago for the first time, and I met your very, very wonderful wife. And her enthusiasm, her excitement of working with us really opened new possibilities. And that's where we have shared values as well. Even with commercial partners, when we have commercial partners coming and working with us, a lot of them have been with us for decades. I'm wearing Omega today. Yeah. The Swatch version, but still Omega. But my point is that Omega is a very good example of a commercial partner who has gone out of their way to work with us to find technology to improve the competition, the games, the judging. So, in fact, the commercial partnership is not a transactory partnership. Is a journey that we build with our partners that we can each benefit the other even from a technology standpoint. In the case like we're talking about Omega for the stopwatches and how we now measure the finishing line, the finishing of races and so on. So I feel that when partners come to us wanting to be part of the Olympic Games that's almost 130 years old, they are here because they understand that this is a mega event that pushes people beyond what they're comfortable with and achieving excellence together as well. So I agree with you. I think partnership is extremely important for us.
I agree. And it goes, as you said, very much beyond the commercial relationship. I mean, it's I would even dare to say that has little to do with the commercial benefit that, of course, a company might have, but they spend a lot of money. They try to help as much as they can. Technically, from the organizational point of view, I've seen with the torch relay, I mean, the sponsor of the torch relay were amazing in organizing everything throughout Italy for a couple of months, for 2 or 3 months. So it's definitely amazing. Okay, great. Let's move to these other aspects from the exhibition. So let's talk a bit about the sports, and I have a set of slides to show you. This is the window showcase of the disc throwing, and we see, of course, a Greek amphora and Etruscan timiaterion reproducing disc throwers, and we have a disc in bronze found in a tomb in Vulci, in Etruria, and we have the disc from the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 1932. And things have not changed very much. And every time I see this, I remain impressed. The same is for the long jump. It is depicted on several Greek amphoras and other vases. We have also a recall to the Paralympic Games. Of course, the long jump is a must in the Paralympic Games. And we have the archaeological highlight, as Giovanna was mentioning in the beginning, of the exhibition, which is the tomb of the Olympic Games. You know that the tomb of the Olympic Games was discovered in 1958, so 2 years before the Rome Olympic Games. And the archaeologist who discovered it was in the cultural committee of the Olympic Games, so it was easy for them to denominate it the tomb of the Olympic Games. But also because of the fantastic paintings. This is one of the, I'm fond of archaeological objects, and especially of Etruscan paintings, and this is one, in my opinion, one of the best tombs that we have from the Etruscan remains. And it depicts actually several sports. Let me show you down here. We have this chariot race where you have everything. This is the winner. Look at how it looks back to the competitors that is winning. The others that try to reach them. We have an accident, as we unfortunately have in today's sport events, and this is a great representation of the Olympic competition. But also we have here above, again, as we said, the disc thrower. So we are 5th century BC. So anyway, couple of centuries after the Olympic Games in Olympia. We have a long jumper, and we have what I believe is one of the best scenes of fast running, of speed running that we have from the archaeological times. And it was easy for us to make a connection with contemporary, modern art. This is Arturo Martini, il centometrista, the 100-meter runner. And you know that we always try to connect the Etruscan remains or the Greek remains with contemporary artists. And for the Etruscans, this works particularly well because the Etruscan art is anti-classical, is informal, and it goes very well along with the contemporary and some modern artists, as in the case of Arturo Martini, that supports him as an Etruscan, although he lived a few years ago. So we have again the 100 meters, and it was easy to connect with other great objects that you loaned to us. We have, of course, the T-shirts that Usain Bolt was wearing during the Beijing Olympic Games when he won, I think, the 200 meters here. We have the shoes of Michael Johnson when he won in Atlanta the 200 and 400 meters, together with an Etruscan foot, votive foot, and we have the shoes of Michael Jordan. So it is amazing to see all of these, how they connect with the ancient times, with the ancient Olympics. So how do you believe the Olympic sport program has evolved during the times?
The Olympic program is actually, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but you know we are really looking at being relevant. So I think I mentioned earlier about the early 20th century. Some of the things that were considered as Olympic sports then would be would be very surprising for people today. For example, in the London Games in the early 1900s, tug of war was a Olympic sports. In fact, Scotland Yard won the tug of war. So if you ever visited Scotland Yard, they have a gold medal sitting in their police station, you know. But today, you won't think that, tug of war is something that's relevant. So whenever we go to host cities, the selection of the sports program is a very close collaboration between the IOC and the organizing committee and the city as well. You know, and also in reflection of what is important today. I mean, with the Milano Cortina Games, there are also some new sports, new winter sports that's being featured. When we go to LA as well in 28, you know, there will be sports that has disappeared from the Olympic Games that will be coming back, like squash, you know, for example. Yes, squash is coming back. Yeah. And, you know, they are also introducing things that is relevant to them, like lacrosse. Right. And also, the games are never static. And I think that's my main point. The main point is that the games is reflective of the people who won the games, reflective of the times, and it has to also resonate with the young people, that it means something to them. So I'm sure, I think when we have this exhibited in your museum, a lot of the young students that come were pleasantly surprised, right? Absolutely. In terms of seeing some of these things as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's fascinating what you were telling, that we are able to connect sports that were present from 776, when the original Greek Olympic Games were started, that were translated to our days, and having new sports every edition of the games, connecting with the country that is hosting the game. I think this is really amazing, because it helps, as you were mentioning, to bring the young people to the sports that they love, that we probably didn't even know 10 or 20 years ago. And it's fantastic that the Olympic Committee can adapt to have also these sports in the Olympic program. So I think it's great. Great. So also, we are showing on loan from the Olympic Museum in Lausanne some artifacts of opening ceremony. This is just an example. This is from Torino, 2006. This is the so-called Uomo Scintilla, the flaming man that was part of the Olympic opening ceremony in Torino. I would like you to reflect on this. The opening ceremony, besides the symbolic importance, is becoming also an art show. Especially the latest editions have been amazing from the point of view of what was shown. And even in San Siro, a couple of weeks ago, we had great exhibitions of art. How do you see the connection between the opening ceremony and art, and of course the cultural movement that surrounds the Olympics?
The opening ceremonies is possibly the most watched, you know, ceremony in the world. I think, you know, the billions of people that watch opening ceremonies. It's in itself a great opportunity for the host to really explain to the world how they see themselves, you know, and what is important to them. For us, collecting during the opening ceremony is a key priority. So this is one of many costumes that we collect. And the other thing that we do a lot is also to interview the people that were involved with the opening ceremony, from the creative director to the costume designers and so on. In fact, this year, we did for the first time is to get a famous fashion photographer, Italian fashion photographer, being in the city of fashion, to actually document the opening ceremony. So Gianpaolo Gura worked with us, and what really touched me was that he's able to capture the emotions of the volunteers. This brings me to another very important topic of the games, is the importance of volunteers. How volunteers contribute to the success of the games, because it's a big sacrifice, time, effort, and all that. And it's their love for the games that, you know, we need to, in some ways, capture, and to be able to share with future generations as well. So with the photography, we were able to, you know, kind of allow these volunteers to become supermodels for the day, to be photographed by a famous fashion photographer. But I think more importantly, we are also hoping to tell this story after the games. So with the photography collection, with the costume we collect, we want to be able to go around the world to kind of share this aspect, the creativity of the our Italian hosts as well. Even in Paris, we did a big fashion show with a museum, which is the Museum of Decorative Art, that really look at how sports has impacted fashion, especially you know, sportswear in that sense. So that's actually one of the most exciting thing for me as a museum person, is that, you know, you would think that my job is only about sports, but actually it is not. It's so much more than that. It's really about life, about society. We see ourselves as a museum that is a lens to look at social history through the Olympic lens, you know, for the last 120 years. And in that way, we are able to reach out to more people who are not sports lovers. Yeah. And we hopefully convert them to be sports lovers.
Absolutely. You might be impressed to see how many lawyers, professionals around the Milano center of town, they proudly wear either the USA team shirts and pullover, or the Italian jacket, the Italy team jacket. It's fantastic how really sport is influencing fashion, as you said. Yeah. So it's really great to see it. Absolutely. Great. So let's move to one of the final topics. This is an Etruscan cista. Cistas were objects typical of women, where women put in the Etruscan time. This is typical of the Etruscan times, where they put their oils, perfumes, and things like that. And curiously, depicted on the cistas, there are several times athletes. In this particular case, even boxers were represented on a typical woman object, because the women in Etruscan times were doing sports, were participating in sports. You know, it was not like that in the Greek times, because this was forbidden for women. They could not even, unless in particular cases, attend as spectators the games. The games were reserved to males. In Etruria, it was not like that. And even a typical object of a woman had paintings or graffiti, in this case, of boxers or other sports. And I think that the Etruscan translated very well the value of women participation in sport, and in particular in the Olympic Games. And we have also the shoes of Nawal El Mutawakkels. I hope to be able to pronounce it correctly. She was the first woman of Arab origin, African, Muslim, to win the games. And we have her shoes. So women are so important in the history of sports and of the Olympic Games. And we see even today. Today, I think it's probably the first time that we're almost 50-50 between men and women in the participation in the Olympics. And for some countries, including Italy, women are winning many more medals than men. So what is, in your opinion, the role of women in sports and in general in the Olympic Games and movement?
I think I have to first share that Nawa was here in the exhibition a few days ago. She was because we didn't tell her that we exhibited her shoe, so she was very, very pleasantly surprised. She was taking many, many selfies with it. We should share with you as well. I think, like in society and not just in sports, I think that women play an important role, and I think it's only right that in this time and day that we try to find equity, you know, in sports as well. This is for me, I think it's an amazing time to be part of the Olympic movement, because of course, as you all would know, we also have our first female president for the IOC. After having 9 men leading the International Olympic Committee, we now have a very successful athlete, Olympian, wife, mother, daughter who is actually leading our organization. And I think there's already, you can feel that there is a difference in terms of how we look at some of these things. But that said, I mean, reaching this equities, this 50-50 started in Paris, and it's requires a lot of work behind the scene. I think it's hard for people to understand how do you achieve this. It's a fine balance of trying to figure out the disciplines within the program. How many men races, how many mixed races, and all that. So there are a lot of people behind the scene working with a lot of international federation to get this done. So although for us to look at it seems quite straightforward, but it's actually a very complex thing. But once it's done, like you see, it will get easier and easier. The first is always harder. Yeah. So I'm very happy to say that we have finally gotten to this point where I think hopefully in a few years this will no longer even be a discussion, because it's natural. This is how the world should be.
I agree. It's like the world should be. I mean, there is no difference between men and women nowadays. I mean, and I must tell you, I prefer to have women collaborators than men. They are more precise. They have better knowledge. They can work harder than men. So I mean, it's normal. It's life. So in sport, finally, it is the same, I think. I think this is the last slide. Again, a loan from the Olympic Museum in Lausanne. We have the suite of Alberto Tomba. You know that in Nagano in 1998, not a particularly lucky Olympics for Alberto, but you know that Alberto is a national hero. Yes. And it's great to have him represented also in the current exhibition. So, but this helps me to introduce the penultimate topic, which is the Winter Olympics. So, what is, in your opinion, the importance of the Winter Olympics compared to the traditional Summer Olympics as a symbol, as a expansion of the values of the Olympic Games?
As I was saying earlier, I think it's important that the rest of the world understand how important winter sports is to certain, I guess, population. I mean, I come from Singapore, so obviously skiing is not in my blood, right? But having watched the Winter Olympics, you know that it's actually so much crazier than summer. how people, really put their life, how amazing some of the things that people are able to push. So I think in my view, I think it's important to share the commitment, the excellence of winter sports athletes. And I think the Olympic Games being such a huge platform will bring that interest. The other aspect, which I think is even more important, is that it's about climate change. It's about sustainability. And I think with the Games as well, we are also trying to educate, the wider public what that really means. So I hope that with each edition of the Olympic Games, we are able to get not just people in this part of the world who love their winter sports to be more conscious of climate change, but also the rest of the world, because they understand the dedication some of these athletes have put in.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that it's extremely important, and now, especially in Europe, of course, perhaps less in other parts of the world, except probably the US. But the winter sports are becoming so important and so emotional for people that having a specific edition of the Olympic Games dedicated to this, it's extremely important.
But that's exactly the thing. Sports is not independent from life. It should be part of life, and winter sport is part of European life. I mean, I've lived here for close to 7 years. I have a 6-year-old son who goes to school in Switzerland, and he's learning ice skating now, because that's part of the Swiss culture. In 2 years' time, he'll be learning skiing. This is something he will take away as his experience. I mean, his life in Europe is way more than just education, language, but it's also the importance in the sports as well.
Agree. Okay, I have no slides for your conclusive remarks. I would like to quote the Olympic slogan: Citius, faster, Altius, higher, Fortius, stronger, and introduced in 2021, Communiter, all together.
Yes.
We wait for your final remarks.
The Olympic movement's motto was updated at a time where I think the world was recovering from COVID. Our last president, who is currently our honorary president, Thomas Bach, was very astute to understand that it is even more important for us to achieve great things together. And it's often, I often say that, when we spend enough time to understand others, we realize that we are more similar than different. It's only when we don't talk that we realize, we only notice the differences. So I hope that with this this motto, that people will understand that achieving great things should also be done together as well.
This is the true meaning of the Olympic Games, I think.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Angelita. 60 minutes, we are perfectly on time. And let me remind you for the audience the next talks. And of course, we have this fantastic slide.
Yeah, so I should share a little bit about this. I already kind of gave a hint. So Gianpaolo Scura did the photography for us for behind the scene. And because of the great collaboration with Luigi Rovati Foundation, we wanted to give this to the museum collection. We haven't printed it yet because the works is there, but this will now be part of the foundation.
So thank you so grazie. Lucio non lo sapeva. It's a surprise for Lucio. And so as soon we will receive the photo, it will be put here because it could be really a nice object, a way to remember the fantastic Olympic Games in Milan, so how much that was important for the city and especially for our museum. So thank you for the gift.
I just have to say that this has been one of the most amazing collaborations we have in Milan. So
thank you.